What's going on, Winston?
Hey man, what's happening?
How you doing, man? Can you
All
hear
right,
me?
good, good,
Excellent.
good.
Excellent. Excellent. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you so much for making yourself available.
Hey man, no
And
worries, of course.
yeah, yeah, most
You're
definitely. So
you're
here
my
we are.
bro,
We
man.
we are live on Facebook, just so you
Okay,
know.
okay, no
Right,
problem.
we already have like a bunch of people watching, and I just gave them a little bit of our background, meaning that I used to sub for you at Rock of Ages. I told them about that you've been with Soul Asylum for a number of years now, but I do, and the title of this live video is Rocka Rolla. So we're
Okay,
gonna talk about rock. For the longest time, I tried to incorporate rock music into these live videos, and I couldn't quite figure out how or just how to go about it, right? And I thought, well, here's the best opportunity. I get to talk to Winston, and we're gonna talk about rock, and we're gonna talk about bass playing in rock music and all of that stuff, right?
you got it. I got your rock covered, man. I got your back.
That sounds good. So listen, why don't you give the audience a little bit of your background, right? Like, how did you get into bass playing, and perhaps even more specifically, how did you make the transition into rock music?
Well, uh, as long as I can remember, I've been playing music.
Right,
So it's from I don't know, maybe the first grade.
right,
I just started playing. Was playing piano
right,
and classical music, listening to jazz.
right.
I took every summer camp class, every course you could take. I went to, grew up in New York City,
Mm-hmm.
went to Bloomingdale House of Music. I went to
Okay,
Harlem School of the Arts.
okay.
I played, everything. It was just total immersion.
Was there music in your family, in your background? Do you come
No,
from a musical family?
no,
Okay,
but my mom, I say my mom, she was really one who was like, this is what, I guess she just knew.
okay.
And I mean, I immediately took to it.
Right, right,
So I'm playing piano. I went to music and art high school.
right.
And then at that moment, I was just exposed to a huge amount of music because
Right.
everybody there is artistic, everybody's musical. And it just, my head just pow. I'm hearing the most progressive rock, jazz, classical music, everything.
Right.
And then my senior year of high school, I just got bitten by the bug of rock and roll and playing bass, and that's when it started.
Right.
I came to it kind of late.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, I totally get that. But I mean, how awesome is it that once again that High School of Music and Arts, it's that just seems to be like the hub for what New York is concerned, was concerned. I don't know.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
it's there. I can. It seems like everybody I talk to or everybody I know went to that high school for real.
It, it's, um, it's kind of got everything going. It's a music school. It's in New York City.
yeah,
It's super diverse.
yeah.
Uh, I mean, it's just, it's terrifying the number of amazing players that came out of there.
There's
It's
no
just,
end. There's
yeah,
literally no end. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's it.
Incredible,
Yeah.
incredible. So cool. Now, obviously, you didn't start on the bass, and you do kind of see yourself as a multi instrumentalist. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that is. Maybe you can talk to that and talk about that a little bit before we get into the whole rock bass playing thing and all of
Sure.
that. But explain what you mean by that.
Well, I guess it's just because I grew up playing so many different things. Like I started on piano and then I took
Right.
classical recorder and I played drums and I played classical guitar and
Right. Right. Right.
and I just kind of picked up stuff and along the way and I just absorbed it,
Right.
and then once I was in bands and doing stuff, a lot of times you just kind of get forced into things.
Right.
It's like,
Right.
okay, you've got to sing backgrounds. You got to play this part for just a second here. So
Right.
that's how it all kind of started.
Yeah, and I mean, how fascinating is that? Because not everybody's trajectory is like that. Some
Yes.
people are like one instrument only, right?
Yeah.
Other people have like one main, or people, especially when it comes to bass. electric upright bass, doublers, right?
Yes. Yeah.
People who play electric bass and piano, or electric bass and guitar, upright bass and piano, like all of those combinations exist.
Yes.
And yet this whole idea with being a multi-instrumentalist and kind of having a good idea of what all these instruments do is just as valid, and
Yes.
kind of needs to be pointed out, in my
Yep.
opinion,
Yes.
at least
Yes.
to a certain degree. Like that,
Yeah.
talent can manifest itself in a variety of ways.
Yes. Well, that's also something from music and art because, as soon as I got there, everybody there played piano well. So
Ah.
I played bassoon. you know,
Of course,
that's
yeah.
what happens.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. No, that's awesome. That's
yeah.
fantastic. So, all right. So now you said the bug bit you, got into rock and roll, right?
Yeah.
And just for those watching, for those listening, there is, of course, in the description of this video, there's another playlist that, in this case, Winston curated. And these are 10 songs that he put into this playlist. There are two more playlists or two more lists, I should say, that I'm going to put also in the description. I just didn't get around to it yet.
Yeah.
Of influential albums that Winston curated, and that is super interesting, because the albums that you sent me, I mean, they run the gamut, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of stylistic differences. There's a lot of different periods and all of that. I mean, what we got here, we got of course, we got Bowie, we got Stone Temple Pilots, we got Queen, but then on the other hand, we also have Weather Report, and we have ABBA. What?
Yep.
We got King's X, we got Howlin' Wolf, we got Heart, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so we got fucking Simple Minds. I mean, there's a lot of music here.
Yeah.
So speaks kind of to the diversity, perhaps that maybe started in high school, or
Yes.
but definitely kept your interest. Is that correct?
Yeah. I think, I don't know if anybody's else has spoken about it, but there was this, to my ears, there was a current in New York City at a point, and it was like Black people playing rock we were influenced by a lot of British music. So that's where you get like the Simple Minds and the Bowies,
right,
and the big country,
right,
right. A lot of that type, Joan Armatrading.
Oh yeah.
There was a yearning for that kind of sound and approach. Suede, I think, was a band that was in there that I wrote down. There's that, and a lot of people have that. Charlie Drayton, Sterling, Zach.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a whole current of that kind of mentality going on.
Yeah, for sure. Would you say that perhaps that sort of all of that led to bands like Bad Brains, Fish,
yes,
24/7 Spies, like those kind of headlining bands that definitely made, turned everybody's head upside down somehow.
Yeah. I mean, my first band, we opened for Living Color, and they were just explosive. They were just an amazing rock band. And that was it. That was what was happening. It was such a huge scene.
Right. I saw them 3 times while still living in Austria. Every time it was like an affirmation of, yup, I want to be that. I want to be a musician. I want to be a musician. I want to play rock. I want to do just that. Whatever I had imagined, they were doing it.
Yes.
Right? And it was the best thing ever. It was incredible. All right. So, there's also, maybe you can fill us in on sort of an area or a style that I'm not totally familiar with, and that is punk rock.
Well, it's funny, like just before we got onto this, and we started the Zoom, I was just talking to a friend of mine, and he was saying, I feel like everything's punk rock. And I kind of was like, you know what? That's kind of it, because when the essence of that is really just the rebellion and the energy, and that's Johnny Cash, and that's Little Richard,
right,
and that's Bob Dylan when he went electric,
right,
and Jocko when he was playing in Weather Report. He's a punk rocker just jumping onto the stage with a jazz band.
for
So it's
sure.
just that, it's that energy. And a lot of times it gets sort of pigeonholed into like a loud guitar, you know, fast eighth note kind of thing. But I think it's just the energy and the emotion of just playing with abandon.
Yeah,
Elvis, when he started, those guys were getting like arrested
right.
and beaten up for playing rock and roll.
Oh yeah, 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 for
So
sure.
it was really very punky. So
I
that's it.
remember.
It's just that approach.
I mean that makes a lot of sense though. That's and I think that very often, you know, due to labels, there, of course, there's somewhat of a necessity for labels because otherwise we don't know what's what. But very often, due to labels, it kind of gets lost that there might be a bigger picture here. There might be,
Yeah,
an approach
yeah,
behind a style of music or behind whatever this label is supposed to mean, right?
yeah.
And listening to you right now, it totally reminds me of. I know Art, my father, used to tour with the Lionel Hampton Big Band, right?
Yeah,
This is, going back to the 50s, like
yeah.
early 50s, right? And at the time, they, at the time, that was my phone, sorry. They had
Lionel
Rachel.
Hampton's calling.
No, yeah, right from the grave.
Yes,
It's like,
exactly.
motherfucker, don't talk about me. Nevertheless, they were touring together with Ray Charles,
Yeah,
right? Art and Ray Charles would share a room every now and then, or most of the time, and every time they went in, Ray Charles got arrested.
yeah,
Like first thing that
exactly. Yeah,
immediately, right?
yeah,
Talking about punk rock, I
yeah,
mean, or talking about being rebellious, talking about being, uh, you know, uh, having a certain approach that perhaps goes against the grain, and
yeah.
maybe that's more of a definition of punk rock than any
Sure.
musical style as
I mean,
such,
you,
right?
if you see like the movie The Girl Can't Help It, and you see
Mm.
Little Richard and Gene Vincent, those guys, they were just Bo Diddley.
Yeah, Bo
They were just
Diddley.
on fire.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
just
yeah,
total rebellion.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I also love that you have like someone like I think you put Howlin' Wolf in here, like,
Oh,
and
well, that yeah,
that's
that's it.
that's so strong, right?
All the blues guys,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
heavy.
most definitely. So for those watching, for those listening, I am going to add these lists to the video that's going to be on the base chat, because that's really good stuff, and I think
Okay,
that's, if that inspires the audience to go out and check out this music, by all means do, because
sure.
there's a lot of stuff there, and very often we get caught up, we
Yeah,
we we get caught up in what we have to play, what we have to learn, all of that good stuff, right?
sure.
By
If
the
there's
way,
anybody, I was
go
gonna say,
ahead,
if there's
Greg.
anybody out there in your audience, they want to talk about rock, just hit me up. We'll chat. That's all
Yeah,
good.
yeah, most definitely. You will also find, Winston's Instagram information that I'm gonna put in there. Should I put your email in there or just the
Yeah,
Instagram?
man, go for it.
Email.
That's all good.
Okay,
Yeah, man.
great. Irio Farrell says hello.
Yes,
Yeah,
love
he's
that
in the
guy.
he's in the comments. All right.
Love him.
Well, listen. Let's fast forward. Let's
Sure,
get into. You have a long-term association with Soul Asylum. Is that correct?
sure. Well,
Okay.
it's been 10 years, I guess
And I
now.
mean, that's
Yeah, it's a
that's
bit.
that's
Yeah,
that's substantial, right?
yeah. I'm not
So
the original guy, but I've
yeah,
been there
yeah,
for a while.
yeah, 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 yeah. Give us a breakdown of what the requirements for the gig are.
Well, it's fast and loose and rock and roll. I mean, it's old school,
Yeah,
monitors in the front, loud, in your face,
right,
a lot of fast songs,
right.
just yelling and energy, and our drummer Michael is Michael Bland,
Yeah,
and it's just sometimes he's yelling at me, sometimes I'm yelling at him. It's just a warfare on stage. The
adrenaline.
audience, it's like so it's great, yeah.
That's
um
awesome. That's
you know
fantastic. Yeah,
but with him it's like a very tight moving machine. It's
yeah,
like very extremely accurate
yeah.
rock and roll.
No doubt, no doubt. I mean, for those who don't know, but Michael Bland used to be the drummer for Prince.
Yeah,
right? For a new power generation. And no slouch on the drums. And from what I
Yeah.
understand, like also considers himself multi-instrumentalist.
Yes, absolutely. He's one of those guys who got perfect pitch, plays
Oh,
everything, plays every instrument better than anyone else.
yes. So
Yeah.
let me ask you this, because I mean, I was, getting this live video together, and I, of course, I can talk about this until the cows come home.
Yeah.
People can take it from me or not, but I want to ask you the question. With all this volume, with speed, right? With volume, speed, high intensity, having to deliver, right? Having to
Yeah.
deliver a performance night after night, every time. Like you can't really phone it in at that point, right?
True. True.
How does that? I'm trying to figure out how I can ask this question in the best way. Um, what is your take on the difficulty of producing that night after night?
Well,
Is it difficult? Is it not difficult? Does it come easy? Is it something that you have to kind of push yourself into? Have you ramp yourself up to get there? What's
I
that? What's that like?
I think it's easy to fail. Well, let's put
Yeah,
it that way.
yeah,
You can, I personally, I try to eat as well as I can, try to exercise. I take a bike with me when I go out on tour.
right,
Uh, try not to drink too much and just get some sleep,
right,
practice.
right,
Just, I mean, nothing crazy, but just not deliberately hurt myself
right.
and stretch and kind of try that. But it's a you have to acknowledge that it's intense music and treat yourself maybe more like an athlete or something, and try to take care of yourself, or things will just go south quickly.
Very, very quickly. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's and here's sort of my take on that. It's always that there's always been sort of rock has a bad name, right, for being simple, for being easy, for being
Right.
so-called primitive, right?
Yeah.
Um, but it's been my experience with the few rock gigs or rock acts that I've played that the minute the volume goes up,
Yeah.
the minute tempos go up, nothing gets easier. Everything is it actually
Yes.
gets more difficult, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's this idea of, well, if it's loud, you can just do whatever. Problem with
Right.
being loud is that everything is heard.
Exactly. Yeah. I
Right.
mean, it's that's exactly it. And it's interesting because um in my day-to-day work, playing and stuff, it's a lot of stuff. Soul Sound, everything's with a pick. So
Right.
that's that's another whole thing. It's like that's what it is.
Right.
It's like
Right.
that was the first thing. They were like, okay, great. Can you play with a pick? Everything.
Right.
And it's like everything. Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
got it. Yeah,
Yes.
I
No,
thought I could, but now
yeah.
I can.
Yeah, most definitely. No, this playing with a pick, being loud, having to perform, having to be in your face with your
Right.
sound, is not as easy as it seems, right?
Sure,
And
sure.
very often there's like this misconception of that. Okay, it's just loud, so you just do whatever.
Yeah.
At least in my experience, and from what you're telling me, it has not happened. Like the
Yeah.
louder it gets, the more difficult things get.
It can. Yes, that's true.
You
Yeah.
know, you know, definitely. Cool. So let's move. So you are doing Soul Asylum, and when we met, you were doing Rock of Ages, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Um, let's quickly, I don't want to stay on it too long because it's also somewhat in the past. So I'm
Sure.
not trying to be nostalgic or anything.
That's all good.
But Rock of Ages, give us your take on Rock of Ages, on the music, on the time period. We're talking 80s. Give us your take on
Right.
all of that.
Well, it was. I mean, it was a great show, and
Yeah.
it was one of those things that kind of comes around every blue moon. I
Right.
mean, the whole band, we were all rock and roll musicians who had
Right.
never played theater.
Right.
So, not that there's anything wrong with musicians that play theater, but it was
Mm.
just, it had a freshness and energy. We just didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know
Right.
the rules. We
Right.
broke all the rules. and we just started playing.
Yeah.
And the sounds and approaches were coming from our experience of playing all kinds of other music,
Right.
and it was great. Just a
Right.
great time,
Right.
right up until last year, 2019. You know, on
That's
fire the
that's now
whole time.
2 years ago.
I know, it's
Yes.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've lost an entire year, just
Yeah.
gone. You know.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was that was noticeable. That was
Yeah.
noticeable. It was noticeable, and it especially then, you know, the details, the minutia of that particular gig
Yes.
were all kind of upside down, right? Because
Yeah.
no music on stage, right?
Right.
You're not sitting down, you're standing
Right.
up, right?
Yeah.
You gotta make eye contact. You gotta, you know,
Right.
not only with the rest of the musicians, but with the audience. Hello,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
I thought that was always, you know, such a welcome change
Yeah.
from doing a musical theater gig or doing a subbing gig or whatever, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Um, so, but also in terms of sound, maybe
Mhm.
give us a little bit of a breakdown. How did you go about it? Because then also I want to sort of
Uh-huh.
compare, you know, the live sound in like a real situation to the live sound in a theater situation.
Well, I've been fortunate that the sound designers and sound people I've worked with in theater
Mm.
have been uh, totally with me on that. And it's analog.
Yeah.
Um, at this point, I understand. I mean, there is certainly a benefit to using fractals and
Right.
Kempers and stuff, but they have preferred it to be analog, and that's what I've provided. So it's bass. I'm usually running into like a SansAmp,
Right.
um, and I'm getting the sound that it should. I'm getting it so it should sound the way it should sound from my end before it gets to the desk.
Right.
The processing is on my side, not
Right.
on the. I'm sending a DI and then it gets, changed into something.
Right.
And that's also something you don't see a lot of necessarily in theater.
Yeah.
It's like usually a lot of times it's like, here's your chord, plug in.
Right. Right.
This is me going, here's your chord, you plug in.
No,
But it wasn't,
yeah,
and
ahead,
it hasn't been adversarial. It's both Peter Helinski and Nevin now at the show I'm doing. We're on the same page. It's all good.
Right. No, that's it, and that's such an important point right there. You know, make sure that your sound is correct, and then send that particular sound to the board. Right.
Yeah.
That is everything. It's the same thing I do with Ain't Too Proud. There's, you know, a good amount of distortion on my signal, because Jameson had a lot of distortion the way he played. You know.
Yes.
There is this muted sound that comes from the foam mute, and all of that is in place. There's no no manufacturing as such, you know, from the house. That all of the manufacturing is something that I do. You're telling me that's the same. Now let's compare that real quick to a rock band situation.
Well, like with Soul Asylum, for instance, I'm sending a DI line from the bass, and then I'm miking my amp, and the amp is raging, boiling loud, not loud, but distorted.
Yeah.
It's two things. It's clean.
Right.
I mean, as clean as you can get a DI playing rock music with a pick. Right. And then the other is heavy. And the sound man and I, we're on the same page. I want it to be very heavy and thick sounding amp wise, with enough DI to give it, boom and clarity on the bottom, the nice bigness on the bottom.
Right.
It's primarily an amp sound.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Give us your take on where do you get the bass, where do you get the treble? Do you get the bass from the amp and the treble from the DI, or is it the other way around?
I'm getting the bass and the low frequencies and the richness and the actual bottom from the DI.
Okay.
And I'm getting all the spiky mid range and high end.
Check that out.
From the amp.
Right.
It's SVT 810. I try to get a really good mic in front of it, a 421, a ribbon. People are like, you can't put a ribbon in front of bass. Yes, you can. Yeah. Put it on there and then get all that. That's the good meat.
Right.
That, that's there.
Right.
That's the stuff that's, the scrapings from the bottom of the frying pan.
Right.
That's coming off of the speaker and amp.
Right.
And I also, specifically with Soul Asylum, I use low wattage amps.
Oh, check that out.
Loud.
Okay.
As opposed to, SVTs and big amps. I'm not a rock and roll. I give me a 100-watt amp rather than a 1,000-watt Class D power amp. No, I want the amp to be sweating.
Right.
And get that.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And I mean, here we are talking about rock music and getting into all this detail. I mean, if there's ever been, a good example for the louder it gets, the more difficult it gets, or the more precise your concept has to be, this conversation right now, best example ever, right?
Right. Because I'll give you another one. Another one too. Because of the actual tempo and velocity of the music that we're playing.
Right.
I prefer solid state amps.
Okay.
Again, the same thing. If I'm going jun, 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 all that glass that it has to go through of an SVT, love SVTs, great sounding amps, but to play high speed, there's a certain sluggishness there.
Oh yeah.
And whereas, on the other end, if you take like a Gallien-Kruger 1001 RB, boom, as soon as you hit that note,
it's there. Yeah.
That transient response comes out.
Right.
It's like a drill. You pull the trigger and it's immediately all the RPMs are there. There's no lag.
It's fascinating.
So small 100-watt. I use an old 100-watt Gibson Lab Series L2, and I think everything's almost cranked, and it's 100 watts into 4 ohms, so it's not loud like big wattage, but it's really, really hairy, distorted, and thick sounding.
Nice. I mean, that's what we're looking for, right?
Yeah.
We're looking for a nice thick sound that kind of covers a lot of space. Excuse me. For those not knowing, give us the instrumentation of Soul Asylum.
It's 2 guitars, bass and drums. The singer Dave plays guitar as well.
Yeah.
So both guys are using it's a Telly and a Les Paul through Marshalls, super loud, drum set, loud, bass. I'm actually the quietest guy on stage, probably. And I love 4 ohms.
Right.
For ampness.
Yeah. That makes so much sense. That's so smart, right? I had this conversation with I don't know whether I had the conversation or I read it in an interview, but Will Lee once said that with the bass is one of those instruments where the smallest change has the biggest impact. Right?
Sure.
And once again, like the conversation that we are having right now is the perfect example for that, right?
Yeah.
Down to the wattage of how your amp will respond to how you play, like all of these decisions and all of these concepts and choices are something that happen very, very deliberately, right?
Yeah.
Let me ask you, in terms of rock bass, right? Give us your top. I don't know. This is a question that I've never asked anyone.
Go for it.
But give us your 5 top players.
Chris Squire from Yes.
Okay.
The guy that started it all for me, Tom Peterson from Cheap Trick.
Good one. Yeah.
Just enormous sound.
Yeah.
And great singing and all that.
Yeah.
Obviously people like John Paul Jones, those guys.
Yeah.
Pete Farndon from the Pretenders.
Oh wow. Okay.
Tony Levin.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean those are the guys. And then the guy, I think the guy that is of the moment right now, and he embodies the heavy, thick, distorted Robert DeLeo from Stone Temple Pilots, and nobody
Mm.
can touch.
Oh
Nobody can
yeah,
touch that.
yeah, 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 yeah.
He's like
That's.
the new. He's like the modern Entwistle.
Oh yeah, I can totally see that. I can totally see
James
that.
James Jamerson, playing in a rock band.
Yeah, yeah, very much so, very much so. Just continually changing lines,
Yeah,
deep, fat, finger picking sound,
yeah,
all of it. Like, yeah, I can totally see that. I can
yeah,
totally see that.
yeah,
That's, I mean, that's a great list right there.
yeah,
That's innovative bass players, innovative musicians, kind of
yeah,
pushing the boundaries.
yeah,
Out of necessity, out of because they didn't know anything else. Who knows?
yeah,
Who cares, really?
yeah, yeah,
I mean,
yeah, yeah.
really. But, there was one guy I wanted to bring up, and that's Doug Pinnick.
Yes.
Just you brought up Peterson from Cheap Trick,
Yeah.
and Doug Pinnick. Definitely for me at least is one of the guys who very very distinguishable sound, like
Yes. Yes.
immediately, right?
Yeah.
You cannot. There's nobody else sounds like that. That's just
Exactly.
reality.
It's fantastic player, incredible sound, amazing singer.
Yeah, that's true.
Um,
Yeah,
and then again, going back to what I said, as a black kid growing up, you're like, there's somebody doing what I want to do. It's like
yeah,
that's him.
right, right, right.
Tony Butler from Big Country.
Yeah,
These are the guys that are like, there's someone else out there that's feeling the same way that I am.
yeah, 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 yeah. Most definitely. I always had that association with the drum. I don't know the guy's name. The drummer from Simple Minds.
Yeah, Mel Gaynor. Yeah,
Mel Gaynor.
absolutely.
There you go.
Yeah,
That's most definitely. Oh, wait a second. There's a black dude in there.
yeah,
and,
yeah,
and he's playing,
yeah,
hard. There's
yeah.
no two ways about that.
Our
Um,
British friends had that really down in the 80s and 90s.
that's correct. That's very very true. I did see Entwistle live with the Who,
Hmm.
96, 95, 96.
Uh-huh.
Uh, they were touring Quadrophenia in Europe. I was still
Hmm.
living in Europe.
Hmm.
Um, they played Vienna,
Hmm.
blew me away. All right,
Yeah,
Entwistle live was, I don't know if you ever
yeah,
experienced him,
amazing.
a force of nature. I mean,
Yes,
so much
yes.
adrenaline, like so much sound, right? And all you could see was this.
Yeah,
That's the whole night. Like you only saw this, and all you heard was sound, right?
yeah.
So I checked out I was at the concert, was blown away. I knew that they were playing Munich a couple days later.
Hmm.
Um, Jumped into the car, drove to Munich, saw them
Oh man,
again.
that's the move. That's the
Yeah,
move.
had to do it. Had to
Yeah,
do it. There was just no two ways about that.
yeah.
All right, well, let's fast forward a little bit,
Sure.
because again, I didn't want to keep this too nostalgic. Rock of Ages has come and gone, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, is it still running off Broadway or is it
Yes,
not?
it's off Broadway. Yeah,
Okay, okay, okay,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Um, but then now your new gig, so to speak, or your next gig, so to speak,
Hmm.
was the musical Tina,
Yes.
right? And now talk to us about approaching that library, so to speak. Ron Carter calls it the library, like
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
the repertoire of songs. Like,
yeah.
how awesome must that be?
Oh, it's fantastic. It's the songs are great, music's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Uh, it's wonderful that she is alive and with us, so she can contribute to her story.
Oh
It's
yeah,
not a story that we're telling for someone else.
yeah,
She's there, boots on ground,
yeah,
making sure everything's right.
yeah.
So you're learning a lot from that, and it's the same, really the same approach. You're
Right.
talking about from the 50s to
Hmm.
the 90s,
Right.
and Ike and Tina Turner. That's black rock,
Right.
basic, same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
It's R&B is in there
Yeah.
and everything, but the energy and the emotion is rock and roll.
Yeah.
It's fast and heavy.
Yeah.
And at the end of the night, when we do our final number, um, I am playing as fast and as heavy and loud as I would be in any rock band.
Yeah.
even though I'm on Broadway, it is thunderous
Yeah.
coming off the stage.
Yeah. That's this. I mean, it doesn't get much better than
Yeah,
that, really.
yeah, yeah,
When this, people kind of misunderstand like the perks of this gig is,
yeah.
very often that if you have a show, um, where that style or that energy, attitude, whatever is called for, you get to do it every night.
Right. It's a 2.5 hour long rock and roll show. I
Yeah.
mean, when I'm done, I'm just as excited and beat up as I would be doing anything else.
Yeah. And I can attest to that because our theaters are opposite. Like our
Yeah.
our stage door is where
Yep.
your no where your entrance
Yep.
is. Yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, I definitely I saw Winston walking down the street after many hours of rehearsal, just being like, dude, I can't talk anymore. I'm so tired.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's true. That's that sometimes it'll be like that. Like
Yeah.
if there is high energy music to be played, it will take a toll, right?
Yeah.
And if you have to do it for many hours, which these rehearsals are, where
Yeah.
you have to turn it on
Yeah.
in a heartbeat,
Yeah.
it
And it's
can
a
get
fun challenge. I'm trying to reproduce the sounds bass wise
yeah
from 1950, very flat wounds,
yeah
passive,
yeah
to the 90s, active, hi-fi, 5 string, very clean and
yeah
detailed on my
yeah.
Private Dancer in that era. So
Oh, so cool,
it's
so
it's
cool.
good.
Yeah. I can imagine this. That is. I remember, back in Austria, we had these Austrian TV broadcasts, sometimes late at night for whatever reason, scheduled live concerts that would come on,
Sure,
and
sure,
I
sure.
would record them on our VCR,
Hmm.
and one of those was Tina Turner, right?
Yeah,
Private Dancer Tour. Bob Fate on bass. I don't know if,
yeah,
if that
yeah,
name ever came up, but
yeah.
yeah, and the big muscular saxophone player. I don't know his
Right,
name.
right.
Uh,
Jim Capaldo or something.
Something like
Yeah,
that. Yeah. So, I mean, I must have watched that videotape many hundred times.
yeah,
She was and still is uh, a force of nature,
yeah,
and the music was this mixture of a lot of styles and just
yeah,
rock. Right?
yeah.
It was nothing else. It was
Yes,
just
absolutely.
out there, rock,
Yep,
strong, loud, fast, all of it, and
yep,
and somehow danceable. It's
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's funky
uh,
and it's everything. Yeah.
yeah, most definitely. So I mean, what an awesome way to spend your time as a freelancer, right?
Yes.
You know, maybe talk to how do you take like how do you keep the live playing? How do you keep the theater playing? Do you keep it separated? Do you don't separate it? Do you like approach it always the same way? Um, what's your routine what that is concerned? I know I talked about that a lot already in these live videos, but I'm wondering like how do you approach that?
Well, I mean, they're both live shows, so I'm
Right,
trying to do the same. The outcome is the same. I'm trying to refine it down
right,
and make it as good as I can get it.
yeah,
And that's on the theater side. You have multiple shows, and you can keep fine tuning everything, and
right,
so it's okay. This is good. And the same with the band, maybe with Soul Asylum playing live.
right,
It's the same band, and it's the same goal, trying to make it as good as you can get it,
right,
all the time.
right,
Um, Maybe it would be different in theater if I was not on stage performing that type of music, but
right,
because the music is live based
right.
rock and pop music, it's the same thing in the end.
Right. Now, do you see yourself very often kind of, do you see a cross pollination happening
Oh,
every
sure,
now?
sure.
Yeah, how does that manifest?
Well, definitely, for instance, in the technology of theater will
Okay.
inform rock because
Yeah.
we have uh, theater has at our disposal every possible thing you would need to make things, to make sound. So every piece of gear and every approach and the
That's true.
science of music and all that. And then on the other side, you just have, you know, take your gear, put it on stage, plug it in and play
Right.
from rock and roll.
Right.
The don't think about this too much. You're getting too, this is getting too involved.
Right.
Just start playing. You
Right,
know,
right.
um,
Just get the point across. You
yeah,
know, don't as you
yeah,
said, don't think about it too much. That
yeah.
makes a lot of sense. Do you find like the difficulties, or I shouldn't say difficulties, but the particulars of
Hmm.
the theater gig? You know, where I get that quite a few times, or quite a lot from peers. Like, I don't want to play the theater gig. It's always the same thing, right?
Right.
How does that, like, is there any value to that? Is there, especially now, keeping in mind that you do this rock gig as well, right?
Right.
What's your take on that? I know I have an answer for that, but I'd love to hear it from
My
you.
well, my take on it is this: if you had the opportunity to be um, a chef,
Yeah,
a world class chef,
yeah,
sushi chef,
yeah.
or any other chef, and you could sit in a place and you could cook every day and make what you're doing better and better. You can just go every day. I'm going to make this particular meal, and I'm going to use the best ingredients, and I'm
Mm,
just going to keep doing it until it's perfection or as close as you can get to it.
right.
That's why people go out, to the same restaurant all the time and eat the same food,
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
the person making it is the discipline of them doing it over and over and
Mm,
making it as good as you can get. I mean, of course you have to fight boredom.
right.
You don't want that to happen, but the opposite of that is you have an opportunity to do something consistently and get better at it. It's a
Exactly.
practice, the
Yeah.
practice of being, like yoga, or something where you just do the same thing and you
Yeah.
just get better at it.
Yeah, most definitely. No, I totally get that. I totally get. I think that's such a fantastic analogy. I always kind of brought it back to, well, wait a second. Here you have, say you have a pop gig. The few pop gigs that I've done were very strict,
Hmm.
right? If you are traveling with a stage, with a crew, with lighting, with you know, programmed drums, whatever, right?
Yeah,
You have to, like, you cannot even change the set list really from one day to
sure.
another, because everything is has to log in with what's going
Yeah,
on. So how much of a difference is there really to
right.
playing a theater gig?
Exactly. Exactly. And whether it's whatever gig I'm doing, if
Right.
I'm on stage and I'm bored or I'm tired of doing it, then it's time for me to go because
Yeah.
something's wrong. That means
Yeah.
that I'm something has happened.
Yeah.
There's a fundamental problem because I'm like, what I want to do, which is play music, is now repellent to me somehow. And I need to just do something else.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, most definitely. Oh, that is you're saying quite a mouthful right there. This is awesome. No, this is, I'm so glad that, the audience is not just hearing it from me.
Well, George, you've got a heavy hand, George.
I
So
have a heavy hand.
there
Yeah,
there's
like,
there are others of us out there. You
yeah.
know,
Yeah,
we're
no,
here to
we'll
you
hold
get
each other, we hold each
yeah.
other
Everybody
up.
says you have a heavy hand. I'm like, that's what happens when you play rock and roll.
Yeah. Yeah. No, there's, you want a big sound, you need to put
Yeah,
something in it.
yeah,
That's just what it is. That
yeah.
I some people can do that with not having a heavy hand, with
Sure, sure.
low action,
Yeah,
and I'm certainly not the one to take anything away from that, because I've seen it happen. I've
yeah.
seen it done, right? Um, you wouldn't believe the sound that's coming out of some of the instruments with really low action, right?
Absolutely.
Uh,
Yeah.
with not using, like, I had this conversation while doing Memphis. Shelton Beckton was our keyboard two associate
Yes.
conductor, right?
Yeah.
And he is is Roberta Flack's MD for a very long time. So I figured, okay, let me just ask Roberta via Shelton. Willie Weeks in the studio, it sounded to
Right.
me like he was using a pick, right?
Yeah.
Especially like the I forgot which album it is now, but it's the Roberta Flack with Donny Hathaway.
Yep. Yep.
It's not Back Together Again. That was not Willie Weeks, but it's like
Yep.
an album before that. It sounded to me like he was using a pick, and I was like, well, perhaps he was using a pick. Who knows? I mean, everything is possible, right? So I asked the question to Shelton, who asked Roberta Flack, who was there, right? And she was like, no pick.
Yeah. Yeah.
All in the fingers,
Yeah.
all and you would swear it's so heavy and it's so strong and it's so clear.
Yeah.
You would swear there's a pick involved. And
well, that's an approach too. Like I have a couple of basses that have very low action,
right.
And then there's something to be said for, there's a lot of that school of thought. I think of maybe, I'm not sure if he does it, but I'm going to say like maybe a Duck Dunn or somebody,
right,
which is turn the amp up really loud,
yeah.
and then have a soft touch. And
right.
The dynamics are just, everything's right there,
right,
and it's just gigantic sounding,
right,
because there's just all of this information coming, but the touch is light as a feather.
Yeah.
And it's powerful.
Yeah, most definitely. Notice whatever sounds good is good. I hate to oversimplify it, but that's, at least from what I can understand, that's something that's a generalization that we can take away. Like whatever sounds good is good. However you get there, please get there.
Right.
just get there, no matter what you're doing.
Yeah, it's, like motorcycles, they have small, low horsepower, small engines, incredible torque and speed. And then there's cars that have massive amounts of horsepower.
Yeah.
And that's how they get there.
Yeah.
It's just all whatever.
Yeah, most definitely. No, that
how
makes,
you get there.
That makes so much sense. That's such a, and again, like the analogies are just so important. Do me a favor.
Yes.
There was something that I wanted. Oh yeah. We kind of skipped over that, and I did wanted to bring that up with you, because you were in New York at the time when a club like CBGB's was active.
Yes.
Right. I want you to talk about the club culture of rock in New York, because it seems to me that you have an idea of, at least you experienced it. I came to New York a little later, 96, right? I played CBGB's. It was still there. Like I played the Continental. I hung out on St. Mark's, but you have more of an in what that is concerned.
Well, I would say this to start. Let's just take, for instance, the island of Manhattan.
Right.
Probably anyone who's listening who lives in Manhattan, wherever you live right now, not that far in back, there was probably a club right there.
Right. That's true.
Every place had music. There were so many clubs. I mean, there was CBGB's, but then, the Pyramid Club and Brownies, and every place you could play every night. You could go out every night and see whatever music you wanted to have. If you were a musician, you could play every night and support yourself playing with singer-songwriters, with bands, Monday through Sunday. And that's, and then the culture and everything else supported that. Now, not so much. I joke about this, that Minneapolis is, I think, like 600,000 people perhaps in Minneapolis. It's one, whatever, the size of Manhattan. Yet Minneapolis has probably the same or greater number of music stores. Because if I had to go, if someone said, well, I want to buy a such and such instrument, I want to buy a jazz-based, 60s era. I want to pick through some. I'd go to Chicago Music, or I'd go to Minneapolis, because there's 5 stores that in Minneapolis have, because New York the support is just not the same.
Right.
And so you get fewer bands,
Right.
fewer things that are happening. Now it's harder to be an original
Yeah.
artist in New York. Where do
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
play?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Uh, so I'm holding on for places, like the Bitter End,
Oh yeah.
Well, there's a great example. The Bitter End I think, is the only club on Bleecker Street. Whereas there was like 5 or 10
Yeah.
clubs
Yeah.
next
Yeah.
door to the Bitter End.
Yeah. Yeah. No. No. Most definitely. I mean, of course, I've been following social media and all of that. The Bitter End is starting up again.
Yes.
Now that we're perhaps moving into yet another stage of the pandemic that's closer to a grand reopening or whatever you want to call that.
Yes.
So yeah, the Bitter End is coming back, right?
Yes.
It would behoove us, and this is kind of the point that I'm trying to make as musicians, to make sure that we go out, make
Yes.
sure that at least we cannot always bring the audience in, but we can certainly be part of the audience. And
Absolutely. Go. Osnoy is playing at the Bitter End again.
right,
Go see him because he's amazing.
right, right, right.
If there's a club in your country, in your town, in your
Right.
state,
Right.
Go out and just, if you
check
once
that out.
if
Yeah.
you once you feel safe with COVID and you
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
feel that there's an issue, and it makes sense to you, go out and see somebody, and
Yeah.
and
Yeah, and then just support and just be
Yeah.
there, because I always liken it to like two sides of a coin. On the one hand, there is the side of us making the music and doing the whole artistic expression and expressing ourselves and communicating. On the other hand, there is being in the audience.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe you can.
Mhm.
We're also getting close to finishing this up, but maybe you can sort of give us your take on being enthusiastic in the audience. Like, how has that influenced you, and how did you take, or how are you taking that influence, that enthusiasm, and putting it into the music? Is that something that you're conscious of? Is that something that you have had to work on?
Well, I do a gig. I say do, as if things are in the present, but
Right.
before COVID, and I play with a blues artist down the Jersey Shore.
Right.
Sometimes, it's a small audience. First, you
Right.
have to start playing. You have to play for yourself.
Right.
I mean, I remember I did a gig one time with him, and nobody came. Literally, no one showed up.
Yeah.
And we had the greatest time, because we're just playing for yourself. Play for your
Right.
band, play
Right.
for your group, play for your own heart. And then everything else is fine. Then
Right.
the audience, whatever they give,
Yeah.
that's just cake.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if you want to play music and your only reason is to get the rush of energy from the crowd, you'll just be hurt and killed. It's not going to happen for you.
You
You'll
might
just be
starve. Not only literally, but
Yeah, but
figuratively.
you'll be emotionally smashed into pieces, because
Exactly.
to feel, to have the only way that you can feel love and togetherness is from another person.
Right.
It's not going to happen for you. So just go out and play for yourself,
Yeah.
and everything else finds its own level.
Exactly.
When people
Oh.
are excited, that's awesome. That's
Yeah.
great, and that just makes me more excited. But I'm
Yeah.
already excited.
Yeah, but you have to
You
be
know?
excited first and
Yeah.
foremost, and you have to be
Yeah.
enthusiastic about what you're playing. Like,
Yeah.
you gotta get off on what you're doing
Yeah.
first and foremost. Otherwise, you're never going to be able to communicate that feeling to
Yeah.
an audience, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's and a lot of that is just playing a lot. Just
Yeah.
play. If specifically we're talking to, the people out there that are musicians,
Right.
just play in all kinds of bands, and play all
Right.
kinds of places, and
Yeah.
play in a
Yeah.
little small restaurant, and play at Wembley, play wherever you can.
Yeah.
My,
Go ahead.
some of my friends, like for instance, my friends Frank and Richard from Guns N' Roses, they're in a huge stadium band,
Right.
and they'll play, they'll take their amp in their hands and play at your small blues club down the street.
Right. Right.
There's no pretension about that. That's like, we're in there to make music.
Right. Right. So important not to lose sight of that.
Yeah.
I mean, this, and of course, like we are in somewhat of a great situation because we do have these theater gigs that
Yes.
are after all in the scene of New York, like that's taken over where studio gigs used to be, where
Yes.
perhaps jingles used
Or
to be,
jingles. Yeah.
you know,
Yep.
all of that. So it's yes, it there is the possibility of getting jaded,
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
large
Yeah.
way because I don't have to do anything
Right.
for there to be 1,500 people in the theater every night.
Right.
All I have to do is show up.
Right.
Right? I don't have to do any promotion. I don't have to do any schmoozing. I don't have to do any of that. Right? Uh,
Right.
I'm there. My seat is there. Like my everything.
Right.
If I want to, my bass is set up every
Right.
day
Right.
the same way. Right?
But
So
but the thing is, George, though,
mm,
that's not true though, because
mm,
your energy is why they're there.
exactly.
If you just decided to not to just phone it in,
Yeah.
people would not show up.
Yeah. Well,
It, it's
that was exactly going to be my next point. Like there is the danger of that making you jaded, right?
Yeah.
But if you don't bring your enthusiasm, if you don't bring your reason of I want to play this because I get off on this,
Yeah.
right? It's going to translate into the music, and then people are not going to come.
Right.
There's just no two ways about it. I am
Yeah.
such a, and I know you are coming from the same point of view, but I'm such a fan of the idea of communicating emotions through music, right?
That's it. That's what it's all about.
There you go.
I mean, the bass.
Yeah.
It's. I don't. I'm not saying this in a denigrating way. It's
Mm.
not the French horn or
Yeah.
something where
Yeah.
the instrument itself is so hard to play, or the oboe, where
Right.
you can't even produce a good sound out of it. It's
Right.
so hard.
Right.
You can pick up the bass and you can play.
Right.
Probably relatively quickly, you can get some kind of a sound.
Right.
It's all what's going on in your head
Yeah.
and what you decide to do. If you want to play exactly the wrong thing, you're totally free to do it.
Right.
You know,
Right.
if you think that this is your simple approach is the way to go, no problem.
Right.
You know, the instrument is a blank canvas to just say, you may, which is why you can go and see a band and be like, I don't like the way that guy played the bass, because his thought process of what he thinks the emotion that should go in
Mm.
is not
Mm.
on the same page.
Right. Right.
So
Right. No, that's it right
yeah,
there.
that's
There's
it.
it is a quote unquote easy instrument, but
Yeah,
with that also comes an easier way to get your own emotions out.
yeah,
And if you are in your own way to doing that, nobody's gonna help you. Nobody
yeah, yeah,
can help you, and that's where it gets, in my opinion, that's where playing the bass gets actually very difficult,
yeah.
right? Because you do have to be in tune with what's going on with you, right?
Right. I mean, and the best example of that is if you're doing something and everybody's dancing and jumping around, if you just decided to just stop playing for a couple of bars, everybody would stop.
Yeah.
There'd be
Yeah.
like
What,
and then
what
everything would happen again.
what's going on?
What happened? What just happened? Everybody like, I'm having a seizure. Oh, okay, I'm good again.
Exactly. This, not to make light of seizures, but yeah, that's exactly
Yeah,
that's the reaction. I mean, that's what happens in audiences. Well,
yeah.
listen, Winston, we've been on for a little over an hour right now.
No worries, man.
I want to thank you so much for making yourself available today and talking to me, talking to the audience about these concepts, about our choices, about the what it takes to play rock,
Absolutely.
because I think very, very often it's glossed over. People kind of,
Sure.
don't necessarily see the beauty and also the intensity and the skill level that is necessary.
Sure.
As
Dude, I love talking to you. It's always great talking to you. And I'm supportive of anything that you're doing.
Oh,
whatever the people are that are listening to you, and anybody that is listening. Like I said, I love it. I have a passion for it. I also want to, help people and give back in any way that I can. So like I said, if anybody wants to talk to me about gear and basses and music, we're just, insta me, right? I don't care. It's whatever. It's all good.
excellent, excellent. Well, and for those watching, for those listening, like look out for that information in the description of this video. That's coming. That's coming your way. I'm gonna put that in right
Yeah,
once we're finished. Um, and once again, Winston Roye, thank you so much for being here
you got
today.
it,
I
man. No
really
problem.
appreciate you. And
Anytime, man. It's all good.
yeah, and I sincerely hope that in the not too distant future, we get to hang on 46th Street again, because that's a righteous hang right there.
I think I have a feeling we're going to be okay.
Yeah. All right, Winston, take it easy.
Okay, man.
All right, I'll see you
Peace.
around. All right,
See you,
peace.
man.
All
Bye
right, for
bye.
those watching, for those listening, I'm gonna just sign off for today. As I said, it's gonna I'm not gonna be on next week, but I will be on May 21st and then May 28th. I want to thank you all for coming and sharing this hour with me and Winston today. I hope you got some good information out of it. I love talking to Winston. There's an enthusiasm that comes through that is unparalleled. And I hope that we were able to convey that to all of you out there. And as I say every week, be kind, be cool, and remember we only have each other. And I'll see you all in 2 weeks. All right, later.